ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Please take your seats. All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Oh wait, Nita's got to get back over there to do roll call, so we'll hold on a second.
All right, roll call. Councilmember Morrell.
Here.
Councilmember Giarrusso. Councilmember Harris. Councilmember King. Councilmember Green.
Here.
We have 3 members. We have a quorum.
Thank you. First, I'll take the approval of the minutes from the July 2nd meeting. Moved by myself, second by Councilmember Harris. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
3 yeas, no nays. The minutes are approved. We're going to take a couple of items out of order just to dispose of them. First up, we'll take up item number 6, which is calendar number 35-160 by myself. This repeals our previous ordinance regarding the horses participating in parades. As many of you know from the very contentious meeting we had over that issue, there were a lot of unintended consequences, and at this time I think it's in the council's best interest that we repeal the previous law and take some time to work with all stakeholders to make sure that whatever we do regarding horse participation in parades has buy-in both from the veterinarian community, the SPCA, as well as the various organizations that deal with horses in parades. So with that, I will move.
Councilmember, we have one online comment for this.
Go right ahead.
This is from Sam Tank. He says, this is an unnecessary change that only benefits businesses utilizing horses, which is a business already under intense scrutiny for animal abuse. Repealing this section of the code creates unnecessary health and public safety risks, and I haven't seen any justification for doing so.
I would point the person making the comment to the previous meeting we had on this that had extensive conversation regarding some of the conflicts. In particular, there were some concerns that the ordinance itself required certain vaccine schedules that were not approved or had a consensus among veterinarians. So with that, I will move that we report it favorably to the full council. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Eugene Green. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
3 yeas, no nays. It will be forwarded to the council favorably. Now we can...
Councilmember, you want this on the consent agenda?
Yes, please. Next up, why don't we go, I know we have some presenters here, but before we get to that, I would like to welcome the Louisiana Organizations of Refugees and Immigrants Lori Summer Camp. It's based in Baton Rouge. They're kids from 18 countries, ages 5 to 18. Thank you for being here today. We are going to have some lovely education today on Mardi Gras. So let us talk about discussion of Carnival Parade route safety. We have representatives from the Police Department and Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness. Come on down. Colin, why don't you lead the delegation to the table? Thank you, everybody, for being here. Especially, Buddy, appreciate you being here. For the record, Buddy Michoud, not Buddy Boudreaux, as we heard in our previous meeting repeatedly. That just triggered a bunch of Boudreaux-Thibodeau jokes. But
yeah,
you're
right.
Buddy Michoud, not Buddy Boudreaux. All right. Basically, I know that part of the Teneo report talked about carnival and parade safety. I just kind of want to give an opportunity to kind of like educate the public on first off, what were the changes this year to Mardi Gras as far as from y'all's various perspectives, and how do you think this will impact Mardi Gras going forward, generally speaking?
So at the direction of the superintendent and assistant superintendent, we tried to devise as much plan as possible for public safety after January 1st. As you know, there were significant changes with the assistance of the carnival crews, also trying to make sure we keep it tight and keep it moving as usual. We instituted a serpentine on the opposite side of the street. With the assistance of DPW and Homeland Security, I think the plan went pretty well. We did not note any issues or complaints. We needed the citizens' buy-in. Of course, it's a community situation, and along St. Charles, it's very busy. So we tried to implement a plan that strategically would let the residents get to their destinations, the business owners have their accountability for their patrons as well. But in that, we also know public safety was paramount. So we did everything we could to protect the patrons and citizens of the community, as well as the route. And I think we fortified it pretty well with the plan devised by our executive team, and went forth with had a successful Mardi Gras, in my opinion, on that.
All right. Are there any council questions for NLPD? I will say that, generally speaking, I completely agree with you, buddy. I think that things went off as well as could be expected. I did expect more pushback on the Serpentine, but for the most part, people adapted. And I think that I know that there were some efforts. I know Teneo had talked about just obstructing that side of St. Charles. I think that the Serpentine certainly was a compromise that still let businesses and patrons have access while providing safety. Is that something y'all are going to do again next year, do you think?
That would be the intention and the plan going forward. That would be a discussion amongst the executive team with the superintendent and deputy assistant superintendent. However, we do feel like, given the opportunities with working with Homeland Security, Department of Public Works, I think it'll be great. And as you know, we definitely need buy-in by the community. If we can continue to get the buy-in, I think, like you said, we expected a little bit more pushback in that, but I think a lot of people understood the relevance of January 1st and how it is to try to kind of minimize any kind of tragic situation such as that.
Constable Barris.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for your work protecting us during Mardi Gras. Those areas are in my district, and I would encourage you to make sure that you meet with the neighborhood associations, specifically Faubourg de la Chase Neighborhood Association that's there, and the Garden District Neighborhood Association, to get their feedback, because we did get some pushback when we talked about the Serpentine route. Some of the neighbors wanted the area completely closed off, which I think is detrimental to the businesses and people who need to go back and forth to work and back during Mardi Gras. So I do think it was a good compromise, but I would ask you to meet with the neighborhood associations in advance, well in advance of Mardi Gras, just to get their feedback and what they think.
Yes, ma'am. And in meeting with you previously, prior to that, we know we wanted to buy in, not just with the community, but your constituents, right? Your community, and it's going to entail the French Quarter, Councilman King, yourself. So it's important that we communicate, and I think the superintendent's message was this is all inclusive. It can't be just one thing fits all. So although we have public safety at our forefront of this whole Mardi Gras situation, we do need the community buy-in to support us as well. And I think we'll never be 100%, but if we got the majority on our side, I think we did a great job with the compromise.
Thank you.
I'd just add that to the council member's point, in the Teneo report, they're talking about a dedicated public safety lanes on St. Charles, and I don't know how. I mean, that will certainly require a lot more conversation, because if we do that, we would have difficulty doing the Serpentine. Obviously, the Serpentine might be relegated to the to not be done, and then I think it would be more challenging for residents and businesses to get to their place. So I think that at least just my comment as far as the Teneo report is that would be difficult to accomplish. Over the years, we've dedicated resources to having on both sides of the parade route streets that are pretty much dedicated for public safety as far as width and structure, to make sure that off the route public safety vehicles can get where they need to go very quickly. And I think I'd rather see us pursue that.
Are there any other comments about changes from this Mardi Gras season that'll carry over to next Mardi Gras season, or anything you see foreseeably in the future changing?
I think we should all sit down and look at the existing ordinances regarding the, we have the 3-block buffer with trailers and portalettes and things like that. And I think that if we want to maybe start discussing they had some trash receptacle or trash bin verbiage in the Teneo report. If we want to look at incorporating some changes like that, I think that the existing ordinance might be something as a vehicle to do that.
Well, I will say one more thing, I think, and this is something I know that Julia's talked with Buddy about a lot. one of the big takeaways from my experience with this Mardi Gras on the Today Report is that when the parades run efficiently and they run on time, that is the safest version of Mardi Gras, because when parades run well over time, you have officers, you have resources that are on the street, the clock is ticking, it's more costly, but also it just has greater exposure because when there's predictability along the route, it allows everyone to keep it in a measured way. We're going to get to that when we talk about some of the violations, but I do know, in particular, I want to highlight kind of a positive aspect. And one of the interactions we had with Cleopatra, they're talking about revisiting their elements before the first float. I know that in some of our surrounding parishes, they limit how many elements are in front of the first float, like maybe they allow 2 Shriners and not 7. And what people don't realize is that part of the reasons the parades may run late is that when you have a variety of walking, other types of elements in front of the first float, if those do not move swiftly, the entire parade moves slower. And I only highlight that because on some of our nights, when we have parades run till 1, 2 in the morning, that means our NOPD, our sanitation, all of our first responders, they're all out on the route that late. And depending on when the next parade starts, they may get 4 or 5 hours sleep before they're out there the next day doing the same thing. So having Mardi Gras run efficiently is important, and that's something we're going to continue to work on with Buddy and with the crews themselves, because I think in our interaction with them, there is a willingness to see where we can all kind of compromise to make sure that the parades run efficiently.
Yes, sir. And what we find too is we don't want to parade. We don't want to be the police of the parades, right? But they work within themselves in the Mardi Gras Advisory Committee. They do a good job of trying to compromise at those organizations, but we can't police the parades. They got to police themselves a little bit, and by reducing...
We had a confetti cannon element in the Ferret Parade. We had this. I'm going to note where we got responses. Many of the crews responded in writing. Those responses will become part of the public record. I'm going to read the summary of those responses so the public is aware of them. There was a confetti cannon element in the Ferret Parade. They responded the element is no longer part of the parade. The Pygmalion had a confetti cannon fired by a rider. That rider was removed from the parade. Chaos had no repair personnel in the parade. There was clarification given by Chaos that the repair truck was behind float 6. It was confirmed by my staff that a white pickup truck with ladder followed float 6. Choctaw had insufficient bands. It had 6 instead of the 7 required. We had not received a response from them. The Tot had commercialization. There was Raising Cane logos on one of their elements. To be clear for those in the audience, since Mardi Gras as a whole is subsidized heavily with taxpayer dollars, there is an explicit prohibition in commercialization of parades. You cannot get all of your police and security subsidized, your sanitation subsidized, and sell sponsorships. That is explicitly prohibited. We did not receive a response from the Tot. Mid-City had a longer run time this year. The crew does not know why. There was no breakdowns or stalls. We're going to work with them and Buddy to see how we can tighten that up. Cleopatra has some excessive gaps in front of the parade. As I noted previously, they attributed that to having a tremendous amount of elements in front of the first parade. They're going to work with us and Buddy to try and lower the amount of elements. Legion of Mars had a 30-minute delay in roll time. Crew does not know why. No breakdowns or stall. Specifically with Legion of Mars, NOPD walks in front of Legion of Mars. We're going to work and see if we can figure out a way to speed that up. And with Druids, we had an individual in the crew staple his business card to throws and throw them out. Druids removed him from the crew. So that goes back to the commercialization issue. Like I said previously, since Mardi Gras is subsidized by taxpayer dollars, there is an explicit ban on commercialization. You cannot sell sponsorships. You cannot attach your business cards to throws. You cannot promote anybody for the benefit of those businesses, of those people. Like I said, most of these, with the exception of Choctaw and the Tot, actually provided a written response, which we made part of the record to be publicly available. If there are any representatives of those parades who would like to speak today, or anyone else who would like to provide any information, please make sure you can speak. Just fill out a card. You have cards. Julia's collecting the cards, but you can come on up if you want to speak. Just and you haven't filled out a card yet, just fill it out after you're finished speaking. Come on up. Right there. There you go.
Danny Meeks with the crew of Choctaw.
Okay.
On the first violation of the pulled units,
Yeah.
we had 18 floats but 16 pulled units.
Okay.
So we had 6 bands because we had pulled units, and that's how the ordinance reads, is by pulled units.
We
That's what it said in the letter.
we will double check. We do not think that's how the ordinance reads.
And then on the behalf of that, if it does read the other way, one of the bands, I do have a letter from them, they canceled 10 days before the parade, stating that their parents and the school felt unsafe with the New Year's Eve thing on Market Street.
That's a much better response.
Yeah, so I have that. So, I mean, that's here.
Okay.
And then our other one was that we had stopped in the 800 block of St. Charles Avenue for 20 minutes. My parade marshal that's in front of Float 1 said that NOPD stopped us because we had caught up to Legion of Mars. They needed to get, I think they said Pygmalius floats across Poydras. They had to move floats.
Okay.
So they had stopped us. That's why we sat there for 20 minutes, and you got the video from NOLA.com because that was actually my float that I was being recorded. So that's why we sat there.
Okay. Well, if you could give a copy of that cancellation to Julia, just so the public is aware, part of the issue is we expect the crews to contract with parades, and there is always an exception if a band cancels on you without enough time to replace it. That is always an appropriate reason to not have enough bands.
Yes,
so
sir.
if you can get that letter to Julia, it would be helpful also, maybe just like the rest of the crews, if you could just put in writing what you just told us, just to make it part of the record so it's easy to review. I appreciate you responding. I think that's a very appropriate response.
All right, thank you, sir.
Does any councilors have any questions? No. All right. Does anyone else want to speak? Come on down.
Morning, council member.
Yep, good morning.
Just first and foremost, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come here and speak. I'm not here to make any excuses. There are no excuses when it comes to public safety and Mardi Gras safety. We take full responsibility for what happened in our parade. It was a marching group. It was not a member that was riding. That's, again, not an excuse, just simply an explanation. We will continue to do everything that we can to improve our policies.
Bobby, you got to say your name for the record, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Bobby Hortzberg, captain of Crew of Ferret. We will continue to do everything that we can in our power to improve our policies to make sure that there are no infractions like this in the future. I would like to note that last year we spent $1.2 million to put on the Crew of Ferret parade and the post party. 85% of that money went to local businesses in New Orleans. We also, within the last 2 years, personally cleaned out every single catch basin from Tipitina's to Jackson Avenue along the parade route ourselves. We have banned the use of plastic beads. I don't say this to brag or to bring attention to it. I simply say this because I want the council to know, not through my words, but through our actions, that we are committed to making Mardi Gras better and safer, and we will continue to do everything that we can to improve that. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Any other people wish to speak? All right. Hearing none, we will move to the next item on the agenda. We have the discussion of Mardi Gras 2025 generally and future improvements. This is the opportunity, and it's very rare at the New Orleans City Council where it is kind of a 2-minute open mic. So if you have any suggestions or any ideas about what we should do in the future in regards to Mardi Gras, this is your opportunity to speak if you would like to speak. So come on down.
Good morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Last year, I definitely agree with not getting out on the avenue, especially, on the neutral ground side or on the sidewalk side. And, waiting for the parades to come. I'm totally against, everybody coming in and putting their tops and everything. What I'm not against is for people to sit out there and by themselves, one person sitting in the middle of the avenue on the neutral ground, and the Parkway Commission come by and they won't allow anybody to sit. Now, the street cars have already stopped running for the 4 days. So there's no reason, there's nobody can sit on the avenue. I'm not talking about gathering with a lot of people. I'm talking about these little old ladies. I'm getting to be one of those little old ladies to sit out there. And yes, we're kind of holding the spot. But basically what we're trying to do is keep, unfortunately, I hate to say this because I was the president of my sorority when I was at LSU, is to, keep the frats and the sororities from, kind of coming in and taking over a whole block, which they do, which unfortunately they move around. So unfortunately, it ruins some people's Mardi Gras sometimes, and not everybody gets ruined every year. So I got to give them credit for that. My name is Joy Manthe. I guess that's what you were asking.
Thank you. Yeah, I was about to ask that. I appreciate it.
Joy Manthe. I'm from Lake Shore. So anyway, that's really what I wanted to put my 2 cents in, that, the trucks and everything going around picking up stuff at the Parkway Commission, Mr. Mark Karam, he won't allow anybody to sit. If you're all by yourself just sitting, enjoying the sunshine, or even if you maybe even sit with one other person just enjoying them, it's part of visiting. It's part of Mardi Gras. It's part of getting together. It's community. And I just have a real issue with that. I just wish, something could be done. I'm not talking about big groups, 1 or 2 people sitting all by themselves, or at least being able to, people had to stand. We're talking about old ladies in the 80s and 90s were standing out there by themselves, just standing because they couldn't sit. So thank y'all very much. Thank y'all for all y'all do.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? Come on up, ma'am.
Just a reminder, let's get the name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Inez Pierre. I'm at 5709 Wickfield Drive, New Orleans, 70122. So I just have a question, a possibility. Myself and a group of other citizens are interested in getting information on the possibility of having a crew in Gentilly. So I don't know, with the lack of funding for your expenditures as police and cleaning and EMS, and I just want to know, is that something that the city council will approve or would think about or consider?
Certainly, I know we have Nefertiti in New Orleans East. I know when I was a kid, Hercules ran
Right,
through
Country
Gentilly.
Train.
Right, so there's certainly something we're interested in. I mean, I would tell you that I think, from my perspective as a council member, I just speak for myself, I'm very interested in bringing Mardi Gras back to actual neighborhoods and not just the singular route.
Correct.
The challenge is twofold. One is that obviously we'd have to move the resources from police sanitation to those respective areas and figure out how we would marshal them, how we would use them, and how we would get them out. It's certainly something we're interested in, but it's probably, if we were to explore that, it would probably be a multi-year thing working with guys like Buddy to figure out how we do it. I would tell you that generally speaking, and I know way more about Mardi Gras than I ever, it's like learning how sausage is made. You don't enjoy
Correct.
Mardi Gras as much anymore. I don't even know how
Very
Buddy enjoys
meticulous.
Mardi Gras anymore. But what I will say is, just from my experience, if it were to happen, it would probably be outside of Mardi Gras season. And by that I mean there's the 2 weeks
Correct. Yes.
of legislative Mardi Gras. Part of the reason why you have a crew of Chewbacca's and other ones is that since they're not during that cycle, we don't have to move the resources. Because I'll tell you, that Saturday of Mardi Gras, when we have to do Endymion and the other parades, we have to literally shift everything across the city in a very close period. So it's something I won't explore. I'll work with you and anyone else on it. It's just going to require us to really figure out the timing of how to do it and how to get the resources there. But I mean, I would love to return Mardi Gras to other neighborhoods across the city, because I think that the Mardi Gras that I enjoyed as a child was a Mardi Gras where you could literally,
Correct.
you knew there was one parade, you could walk from your house to the route, and you could enjoy a parade just like the people do in Councilman Harris' district. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to acknowledge that I'm aware of that request, and I just want to encourage the parties in the Gentilly area or throughout our city who might want to look at a parade in that area to invite us to that meeting where the members of that crew or that potential crew come together. I know that Councilmember Morrell will be glad to join me. Representatives of the police will be glad to join me. Get them together, and we'll talk about it, okay? We'll come.
Are there any other speakers on this item?
I have some online comments.
Go right ahead.
First
Thank you,
one
Anita.
from Valerie Wild-Killian. She says, as a senior flight lieutenant of the Amelia Earharts, is it possible to have street sweepers after each parade instead of the multiple sweepers at the end? On multiple parade days, if sweepers were at the end of each parade, it would effectively clear the path for the following parade and participants. It would be the same number of sweepers, just intermittently placed. Our members have sustained significant injuries due to parade leftovers, including broken pelvis, broken shoulder, torn ligaments, sprains, and falls. Debris is everything from slipping on beads, getting tripped up in cotton candy bags and Popeyes boxes. Also, can streetlights all be in good standing and functioning for evening parades, please? Thank you very much for the opportunity to share this request. Wishing you blue skies. And we have Michelle Schlafly, who says, as a longtime marching participant in several carnival parades, the trash and debris that littered the parade route is truly treacherous to those marching on foot. Marching bands and dance groups are truly at the mercy of the slippery pitfalls of unwanted beads and miscellaneous trash obstacles. If the city can't afford to provide street sweeping services at more than one interval, as has been stated before, then the city should encourage and promote an all-out litter-free parade route media campaign from Epiphany until Mardi Gras Day so that both citizens and parade participants alike can participate more safely. We as a city should also be learning how to make more sustainable throws so that beads are not constantly littering the streets and trees. Additionally, there should be no more than 2 parades on weeknights during carnival season. The bigger the parade, the longer it is on the street, and no one will be standing out on a weeknight after 10:30, 11 p.m. It's unfortunate that riders who spend a lot of money to throw to an empty parade route. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita.
Yeah, that's
All right, so that gets to item number 5, number 7. All right, number 7. As many of you know, with the, for lack of a better term, demise of the crew of Nix, there was a kind of a gold rush of individuals who all made the argument that they were the ones that should be granted the former Nix permit. What my office kind of uncovered working with Buddy is that there's a wait list, but it's held by NOPD, but there's not really an objective criteria on how you get on the wait list, stay on the wait list, or qualify to be on the wait list. So what my office has begun, and yet another effort for me to like beat my head against a brick wall, is to try and figure out what is an objective criteria so that we can have people on this waiting list, have a publicly facing waiting list, and make sure the people on said waiting list are actually people who want to start viable crews and not people camping on a waiting list to be kind of a shell for a spinoff of an existing crew. And by that I mean that we have a lot of people who enjoy Mardi Gras who are in 5, 6, 7 crews. And part of my intention in trying to get this ordinance done is making sure that as we have a waiting list available to allow for a new crew. Thank you for being here today, guys. Appreciate you. That as we have people who are earnestly on the waiting list waiting to potentially get a crew, that it's not simply spinning off a third version of an existing crew. So we have begun the process. We have a draft. It is not ready yet for airtime. There will be a future, that draft will be released. It will be publicly discussed. It'll be a lengthy process. To be candid, doing something of this magnitude is going to be a multi-month endeavor. We're going to have to get feedback from NOPD. We're going to have to get feedback from the carnival community. We're going to have to get feedback from float builders and the like, because something we have learned just in the kind of ongoing kind of side implosion of Ocean is that there are tremendous costs associated with running a Mardi Gras crew. And we need to make sure, as new people take upon the obligation to operate a new crew, that they are properly capitalized to actually produce a crew. Because what we don't want to do is to bring crews off the waiting list and set them up for failure. So it is going to be a lengthy process. This is really just kind of like floating it out there so that individuals who want to provide information or advice can send it to my office. But we know that in the future, as more crews kind of fall out, we're going to have that waiting list in a way that Buddy can arbitrate it and look at it and say, here's the criteria, it's objective, here's how you stay on the list, here's how you get on the list, and that way we don't have what happened after Nick's, which is what I think we had 5 crews simultaneously all say, we're next on the list, and we really didn't have a completely objective way to say, no, this person's claim is viable and this person's claim is not. So that's why it's here as a discussion point. Does any councilor want to give any additions on that? Of course not. You're all smart enough to not get involved in that. All right. Next is number 8, which is an ordinance to prohibit the sale of confetti by mobile vendors during carnival season. Some of the violations that we had during this carnival season from parades, some of the crew captains responded that the individuals who were told not to use confetti thought as they bought it off a mobile vendor that it was allowed. The clearest way to address that is to simply tell the vendors not to sell confetti either, so that both people who are in the elements, people who are in the crews, don't get confused because something's prohibited and yet it's being sold right in front of them. So this just simply prohibits the sale of confetti by mobile vendors because we are trying to protect our power infrastructure. Does anyone have any comments, any online comments, Anita? Go ahead.
No, I know that there are still not even mobile vendors, but vendors, Mardi Gras vendors that are still selling confetti cannons. So while we're addressing the mobile vendors, I think we also need to address the brick and mortar stores that are still selling it.
Okay, well then this is what we'll do. This is for discussion. I'll get with Julia and we'll look at amending the ordinance and just saying we just won't allow the sale of confetti. I think that is a very great catch. Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Any comments on the confetti sale? All right.
One more comment. I hate to be the Mardi Gras Grinch, but it really is problematic when we have power go out because of confetti cannons.
And to be clear, I know that there's a focus on Mylar in particular, and Mylar is terrible. The problem we have with confetti, generally speaking, is, and this happened in front of Fat Harry's, I want to say, 2 years ago. If you fire paper confetti onto utility infrastructure and it rains and turns into pulp, it will damage or destroy the infrastructure. And it's really cool to fire off confetti streamers, but it's not cool when you fired them off, you've left, and your neighbors lose their power. So that's what we're dealing with. All right, last item for comment is for discussion only an ordinance to amend the permit requirements for street closures for parades outside of carnival season, including processions, marches, and second lines. All right, so it amends Chapter 154 to provide council oversight of moving street closure permits, set application deadline, and require early advertising of the detailed job of the Office of Police Secondary Employment. It requires the council district approval for moving street closures consisting of 8 or more blocks. Council district approval will be through a llama approval event. Second lines held by social pleasure clubs will be exempt as they are governed by a consent judgment. Set an application deadline of 9 days for the proposed event. Must be a complete application including all information specified in the ordinance, and requires that OPSC begin advertising the event to officers interested in serving details within 5 business days of receipt of the complete application. Working with OPSC, the Office of Police Secondary Employment, there is often, when there is not substantial lead time given to OPSC to advertise details for these different parades, they often have a hard time filling the number of officers necessary for the parade. By creating an actual timeline of submit your permit and give that 90 days, we can ensure with our police force that enough officers will respond and actually fill the detail for those parades. So it doesn't apply to second lines held by social aid and pleasure clubs, but we increasingly are having more and more different kind of pseudo parades throughout the season, whether it's the Christmas parade, the Crew of Boo, or other parades that consistently are trying to spring up. We're just trying to create a predictable process to make sure that the city is given enough time to appropriately staff these events to make sure that everyone can be safe. So So that's what it does.
There's one online comment for this item.
Go right ahead.
This is from Marguerite Pellerin. She says, I do not have sufficient information to support or oppose the proposed ordinance since there's little information yet to come, but I believe this council should take note, as recently placed in front of the council, that Bourbon off-streets in the quarter have had closures for every festival that comes along for 1/3 of the 365 days of a year. For almost 100 days, residents have been asked to park elsewhere for safety reasons, only to find other non-residents have taken over their block, and unenforced parking gave drug dealers, bar staff, and tourists the right to free parking. This in the name of safety, to have a block full of cars that remained through the festival without any enforcement in spite of calls to the parking office or 8th District. Only this past 4th of July, the new Commander Palumbo required the parking office to enforce parking tickets and towing, no longer giving drug dealers and tourists the right to usurp parking while residents were obligated to be absent. Kudos to Commander Palumbo for having brain cells and courtesy to French Quarter residents. Our council should be made aware that in the past, nerves have been stretched to the end over this issue, and consider that not every minor festival in the quarter deserves full view of a vacant block to enforce safety. I look forward to more information from the proposed ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that comment. I think the issue that she has doesn't apply to this ordinance, as it's walking parades and other moving street closures. This is not a closure for festivals. This is a closure for parades. So those are treated very differently than a traditional festival, because we basically have to have officers along the route, and the closures are removed as the parade moves down the route. So this is not fixed closures. It's specifically for parades and walking clubs. So I appreciate those comments. We'll take those to heart. I know Councilman King will take notes on everything that was said there. That is also just for discussion only. We will have that ordinance considered at a future date.
Council member?
Yes, ma'am.
I think this is the time, and maybe this is not the discussion to be had now, but I do think that we should look at putting parking enforcement under NOPD, so that NOPD has, it's happening? Joe Giarrusso is breaking news right now.
I know, just to be clear so the public is kind of aware of this conversation, for the last 4 years, Councilmember Harris, and Councilmember Giarrusso have both been advocating that parking enforcement needs to be with NOPD, because when you look at what parking enforcement does, and in particular, some of the dangers that the people in parking enforcement face, it makes more sense for them to be associated with NOPD and run by NOPD. And breaking news from Councilmember Giarrusso, apparently it's finally happening.
Yeah.
I will say I believe that when I see it, but
Yeah,
I mean...
so this is how it came up. I met with the CAO just about budget issues and other things, and this specific issue came, and he told me there is a policy memorandum directing Department of Public Works to put parking enforcement and towing underneath NOPD. And obviously, you know, it was before Essence and July 4th, and it's supposed to send us the policy memo, but as soon as I have it, I'll circulate it to everybody. I don't have it yet myself.
Okay, excellent news. All right, any other comments? Councilman Green moves that we adjourn. Councilmember Harris seconds. All in favor? 4 yeas, no nays, we're adjourned.